In the heart of Ibadan, there lived a young woman named Yetunde. From childhood, she had been admired for her beauty. People often said her face carried the calm of the river Osun and the brightness of morning sun. Wherever she went, to the market, to church, or even down the dusty streets, eyes followed her. But behind that beauty was a heavy secret. Since she turned 17, Yetunde had carried a hunger inside her, a fire that burned stronger than what she could control. It was not just desire, it was a storm in her body that never seemed to rest. At first, she thought it was normal. She told herself it would pass, but it grew stronger with each year. She tried prayer. Many nights she went to vigils at Malate Church, lying face down, crying for deliverance. She drank bitter roots from a local herbalist who swore the herbs would cool her blood. She even fasted for days, hoping hunger would quiet the fire, but nothing worked. At the time she was 20, Yetunde's secret had become her prison. She was with different men, sometimes strangers she barely knew. At first, she thought she could stop any time, but the more she tried, the more it consumed her. Two people knew her truth. One was Yetunde, her childhood friend, calm and gentle. The other was Adebayo, who had been close to her family for years. They were the only ones she trusted enough to confess to one night when the shame was too heavy. She sat under the guava tree in her compound and cried. She told them how her body burned day and night, how she feared no man would ever truly love her if he found out. Yetunde looked at her with pity and said, "Yetunde, this thing will destroy you if you don't fight it. You need help." Adebayo sat quietly, troubled. He had always cared for Yetunde, but hearing her secret made his heart heavy. As the years passed, the hunger grew worse. By 27, she had been with more men than she could count. Some days she went from one to another, as though her body was no longer hers to control. Each time she swore it was the last. Each time she broke her own promise. And in her weakness, she made choices that left scars around her. She slept with a friend's husband, destroying the woman's marriage. She betrayed the trust of a neighbor who treated her like a sister. She told lies to cover her tracks, sometimes watching other people suffer while she kept her secret hidden. At night, she wept alone. She hated herself for the things she had done, but by morning the fire returned, and she fell again. It was in this storm that she met Yetunde, a calm and kind man who had just returned to Ibadan from Lagos. His voice was gentle, his laughter steady. Unlike the others, he looked at her not with lust but with respect. For the first time, Yetunde thought maybe her curse could end. She told herself, "This man is different. This man will save me." But deep down, she knew her secret could not stay hidden forever. He was calm, patient, and gentle. Unlike other men, Yetunde did not rush her or speak to her with hidden hunger. He spoke as if he wanted to know her heart, not only her body. Yetunde felt a peace she had never known before. For the first time in many years, she believed she could truly change. She began to dream of marriage, of children, of a life free from shame. But the fire inside her did not die. When Yetunde asked her where she had been one night, she told him she was with her cousin. The truth was that she had been in the arms of another man, unable to resist the pull of her body. She returned home, filled with guilt, but when Yetunde held her hand the next day and told her he trusted her, she only cried silently. Yetunde noticed the struggle. One evening he confronted her. "Yetunde, this man loves you. Why are you risking him? Must you destroy every good thing that comes your way?" Yetunde had no answer. She simply wept, because she hated herself for it. But the fire inside would not let her rest. Her weakness led her into more mistakes. Once, she borrowed money from Yetunde, telling him it was for tailoring business, but she used it to silence a man who threatened to expose her. Another time, she betrayed a friend who trusted her, sneaking behind to meet the same man that friend was secretly courting. Each lie and each betrayal added weight to her heart. She felt trapped in a cycle she could not escape. Meanwhile, Yetunde was preparing for the future. He spoke to his family about her, and his mother blessed their union. Soon, he proposed marriage. Yetunde said yes with a trembling smile, though her soul shook with fear. Yetunde rejoiced, hoping marriage would finally calm her. But Kehi, another friend who had long admired Yetunde for herself, felt jealousy rise like smoke. She watched Yetunde closely, sensing there was a secret she had not confessed. Kehi began to gather small pieces of evidence, little whispers from neighbors, and things she saw with her own eyes. In her heart, she told herself she was protecting Yetunde, but deep inside, envy was her true fuel. The wedding date was fixed. Tailors began sewing asoebi. The compound was filled with talk of joy, songs of preparation, and dancing feet. Yetunde smiled outwardly, but every night she cried alone, knowing her secret life could explode at any time. The wedding morning arrived with the sound of talking drums. Drummers played bata rhythms outside Yetunde's family house in Ibadan. Women tied gel in bright colors, men wore white agbada, and children ran about, chasing each other through the compound. The smell of fried meat, jollof rice, and puff-puff filled the air. Yetunde sat quietly as her aunties dressed her in white iro and gel. She looked beautiful, like a bride from an old Yoruba folktale. But her heart pounded. She told herself again and again, today will be different. Today I will be free. The hall was decorated with flowers, balloons and golden fabric. Yetunde stood at the front in his agbada, smiling proudly. Guests clapped when Yetunde entered, her mother weeping with joy, her father lifting his hands in blessing. It looked like a perfect day. Then, suddenly, the projector screen at the front flickered. Everyone turned. At first they thought it was part of the program. But what appeared froze the whole. On the screen, a video played. It was Yetunde. Not once, but many times, with different men. Her laughter, her voice, her face, her hands, all captured clearly. Gasps filled the air. Some women screamed, men shook their heads. Guests began to whisper. A few stood up and walked out. Yetunde's smile vanished, his eyes went wide, his jaw tightened. Yetunde's hands shook so hard that the tray of kola nuts she was holding slipped and scattered on the floor. Her mother covered her face and sobbed. Her father stood in fury, gripping his walking stick as if to strike her. The video continued, each new scene adding to the disgrace. Yetunde turned to Yetunde. His voice was low but full of pain. Why? Why did you hide this from me? Yetunde tried to speak, but no words came. She only cried. She stretched her hand toward him, but he stepped back. Silence fell in the hall, broken only by murmurs of shame. Yetunde's relatives stood up and left angrily. Yetunde's family could not raise their heads. Slowly, Yetunde walked away from the stage. His face was pale, his body trembling. He left the hall without looking back. Yetunde's knees gave way, and she collapsed in tears on the floor. The wedding ended not with joy, but with disgrace. Guests left, shaking their heads. Outside, some mocked, others pitied, but all carried the story on their lips. She told herself she had done the right thing, that Yetunde had been saved from a trap, but even as she watched Yetunde crumble in shame, something in her heart whispered that envy had guided her hand. That night, Yetunde sat alone in her room, still in her wedding clothes, makeup washed away by tears. Her life had shattered in one moment. She had lost Yetunde, her family's respect, and her good name in the town. She pressed her face into her hands, and whispered, God, why did I let this happen? After the wedding disgrace, Yetunde could no longer walk freely in Ibadan. Everywhere she went, whispers followed her. Children pointed at her, singing mocking songs. Women in the market shook their heads, saying, so this is the girl who almost fooled Yetunde. Some men laughed openly, their eyes filled with mockery. Her father forbade her from stepping outside the compound for weeks. He shouted at her daily, calling her the shame of the family. Her mother, though broken, sat in corners and wept quietly. Even her siblings avoided her, embarrassed by the scandal. Yetunde tried to console her, telling her that everyone makes mistakes, but Yetunde could not hear him. She was drowning in guilt. Instead of humbling herself, she made choices that only deepened the wound. She began to blame Yetunde in secret, telling herself, if he had married me sooner, this would never have come out. When the word spread, Yetunde's family grew even more bitter. His father declared that Yetunde must never set foot near them again. 2 weeks later, instead of seeking quiet healing, Yetunde fell back into old ways. She met a man from Lagos, who didn't know her story, and in her weakness, she let him close. When the man later saw the viral wedding video online, he cursed her in public, calling her a deceiver. People recorded the scene and shared it again. Her disgrace spread wider. Money became another trap. With no one to trust her with work, Yetunde borrowed from a cousin, pretending she wanted to start a tailoring business. Instead, she used the money to rent a small room, where she continued meeting men in secret. When the cousin found out, he exposed her to the whole family. Her uncles spat at her, and her father nearly disowned her. Even Yetunde grew tired. He confronted her one evening, saying, Yetunde, you are killing yourself, you are your own enemy. If you don't seek help, no one will save you. But she only wept and made more empty promises to change. One night, as she was leaving a man's house, a group of young women from her neighborhood saw her. They mocked her loudly, singing songs of shame, and one even slapped her. They pushed her to the ground and left her weeping in the dust. That night, lying bruised and broken, Yetunde whispered for the first time, with true fear, "If I wake tomorrow, I must change. I cannot continue like this." Lying in the dust with blood on her lips, and shame heavier than her body, she whispered, "Olorun, if I wake tomorrow, I will change." The next morning, weak and shaken, she called Yetunde. Her voice trembled with a humility he had never heard before. "Help me, I cannot fight this alone." Though tired of her many failures, Yetunde still loved her like a sister. He took her to University College Hospital in Ibadan. At first, Yetunde was afraid. She thought the doctors would laugh at her, or call her cursed. But a young female psychiatrist listened with patience. She explained that what Yetunde carried was real, a sickness of the body and mind called compulsive sexual behavior. For the first time, Yetunde realized she was not a demon, but a human being fighting an illness. The doctor gave her medicine to calm her body, and invited her to a support group, where other people with the same struggle gathered. When she first entered the group, she wanted to run. But then she heard the stories of others. One woman spoke about losing her marriage. Another confessed that she had destroyed her career. A man admitted he had wasted his father's wealth chasing desires. Hearing them, Yetunde broke down in tears. She cried openly, and nobody mocked her. Instead, they nodded in understanding. Healing was not easy. Some nights, the old fire returned. She would sweat, restless, her phone in her hand, tempted to call a man. But she remembered the beating on the street. She remembered Yetunde's face on the wedding day. She remembered her father's curses. On such nights, she called Yetunde, sometimes even at midnight. He answered and reminded her of her promise to fight. Slowly, Yetunde began to last days without falling, then weeks. She also began to repair what she had broken. She went to the friend whose marriage she had destroyed. She knelt and begged for forgiveness, though the woman chased her out angrily. She repaid the cousin whose money she had wasted, working small jobs, until every kobo was returned. She volunteered at the clinic, where she was receiving help, sweeping the compound, carrying chairs, and serving water. At first people looked at her with suspicion, but after some months, some began to greet her again. During this period, Kema came to her one evening. Her face was heavy with guilt. She confessed that she had been the one to expose her at the wedding, that jealousy had blinded her, and she begged for forgiveness. At first, anger rose in Yetunde's chest, but then she sighed deeply and said, "You hurt me, Kema, you destroyed my joy, but if God can forgive me, I must learn to forgive you too. Still, our friendship can never return to what it was." Months later, a letter arrived from Yetunde. In it, he wrote that he had spoken with doctors, and now understood more about her condition. He wrote that her lies had cut him deeply. But he also realized not everything had been her choice. He said he was not ready to forget, but he was ready to listen. Yetunde pressed the letter to her chest, and wept. For the first time since the wedding disgrace, hope entered her heart again. When Yetunde received Yetunde's letter, she did not rush to him. She knew trust was not something that returned in a day. It could not be rebuilt with sweet words, but only with steady proof. Weeks later, Yetunde agreed to meet her. Not in secret, not in a restaurant, but at the small clinic where she volunteered. Yetunde was sweeping the compound when he arrived. Her heart skipped when she saw him, standing there in a simple white buba and sokote. He looked the same, yet different, his eyes carrying both love and caution. She did not smile, and he did not either. Instead, he stood quietly, watching her carry chairs for patients, fetch water for an old man, and tie the shoelaces of a child. When she finally walked toward him, she did not try to touch him. She only said softly, "Thank you for coming." "I came to see," Yetunde replied, not yet to believe. They sat together under a mango tree. Yetunde asked her the questions that had burned in his heart for months. "Why did you lie to me? Why did you let me dream of a life with you, when you knew what you carried?" Yetunde lowered her head, tears falling. "Because I was afraid that if I told you I would lose you. I thought lies would protect me, but I now see that lies only destroyed everything faster." He asked her, "Are you healed?" She shook her head, "Not healed, but healing. Every day is a battle. Some days I win, some days I almost fall. But I am no longer the same woman you saw that day in the hall." Yetunde watched her closely. He did not embrace her, but he also did not leave. Something in him saw a difference. Over the months that followed, they met again and again, always in open places. Yetunde's life became like a book under his eyes. He saw that she avoided her old friends, who once tempted her. He noticed she no longer kept secret phones. He even attended one of her support group meetings, sitting quietly at the back, as she spoke openly about her struggle. Trust had not returned fully, but the cracks were slowly filling. Her family was divided. Her father said firmly, "This girl disgraced us before the whole town. I will never allow her near that man again." But her mother said softly, "Sometimes God uses shame to break pride. If she is truly changing, should we not allow her a second chance?" Meanwhile, Kema also went to Yetunde. She confessed her jealousy, her spying, and how she had leaked the videos that destroyed the wedding. She begged for forgiveness with tears streaming down her face. Yetunde listened quietly, then said, "I forgive you, but our friendship cannot be what it was. The wound is too deep." 2 years after the day of shame, Yetunde and Kehinde stood again before God. This time, there was no projector, no crowd, no noise, only a small church, Yetunde standing as best man, and Yetunde's mother, smiling through tears. Her father did not come. Yetunde looked into Kehinde's eyes and said, "I will not promise perfection. I can only promise truth every day." Kehinde nodded, "And I will not promise blind trust. I will watch your steps, but I am willing to walk beside you." They exchanged rings, not with the loud dancing of before, but with quiet hearts. And so began a new chapter, built not on lies, but on truth, patience, and humility. If this story touched you, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe, tap like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support keeps the stories alive and spreading.